Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our new talk show here on Geek Therapeutics. This is the GM Fireside Stories, and my first guest on this show is the one and only Mistress Astra Ebonwing, who has been a wonderful guest GM with Geek Therapeutics several times. Had me cracking up the first time with Maid.
Thank you.
So the point of this show, guys, is that we're going to just sit, relax, and hear some stories about, great GM sessions that our professional GMs have had, or personal experiences even as a player that they have had throughout the past.
Yeah.
And, we'll be open the entire time to questions from the audience, and we're just going to chill, chat, and have a good time. So, Mistress Astra Ebonwing, if you want to take a moment, and the floor is yours. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. So, certainly. Thank you, Chris. So hi, everyone. I'm Mistress Astra Ebonwing. I am one of the many guest GMs here at Geek Therapeutics. My background is probably one of the more, I guess, unique backgrounds amongst the GMs, in that I am not only am I a dungeon master, been doing it now for 25 years, but I'm also a Larper, and I'm also a professional game designer as well, and a video game lead producer. I've been in video games and the video game industry now for about 14 years professionally in varying roles, including video game journalism, community management, and production for massively multiplayer games, and for some mobile titles, and for some online games as well, some single player games. So my whole portfolio is actually really long, and I'll skip it, but some of the titles I've worked on that I think everyone is familiar with is Batman Arkham City. Did community management over there. Everyone knows that one.
Mm-hmm.
Community management for Infinite Crisis, the DC Comics MOBA. Was on Gotham City Imposters, Lord of the Rings Online, and then another game that I think is the most important one out of this entire list, Dungeons and Dragons Online, which I believe everyone around these parts seems to be aware of as a game. I heard Dungeons and Dragons is a game people play.
Just a little.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah. So I was working over with the rest of the crew on that, for about 4 years, many years. I was there for the release of the Forgotten Realms,
Mm-hmm.
and I was there for the release of when we were starting to do the pivot into Ravenloft. Actually,
I bought, when they did the Forgotten Realms crossover with Magic, I bought the booster deck and everything, and I got the Tiamat card. So I got Tiamat, I got Bone Chewer.
You got the Buster card. Yeah. Heck yeah.
But no, that's awesome. So where did you begin with your journey into gaming culture and geek culture? How did it all start for you?
You going back to the olden ages there. So I'm still young, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but I started gaming when I was 3. That was when I first got a controller in my hands and could wrap my hands around the controller and figure out how to play it. And my parents
was that first controller?
An Atari 2600.
Same. Yep. No shame.
No shame.
We both look great. So
yeah, we both look great. We both look wonderful. But the Atari 2600, and it was Pitfall from Activision, was my first game ever. Tank
nice. And Pac-Man.
Ooh, nice. Yes. Good old. Did you have the home Pac-Man?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
I had the home Pac-Man was 2600. We had E.T. as well.
Ooh, you bought the weird one. You bought the one that we definitely found in a urban story that everyone thought was fake but was real.
Mm-hmm.
Where, for those of you who don't know, there was this long-standing joke that E.T. sold so poorly that they had to dump 250,000 copies into an unmarked landfill, and Atari just left it. And they did. Yeah, Atari totally did that. So you have a rare game.
I don't have it anymore, unfortunately, but
Oh, yeah.
I think the only cartridge I have behind me now is the holographic uh, gold cartridge for Majora's Mask.
All right. It's right next to the leather chairs and the view of the river, right?
I wish I had this view. I wish I had this view. I really do.
I mean, I got white walls working on back here. I don't get to see the outside. It's been a while. It's been a while.
All right.
But
Well,
I
that's
started, yeah, I
yeah.
started a long time ago, and then it ended up going into tabletop games and video games simultaneously, and I stuck with it into playing early role playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, specifically Dragon Strike was the game I
Ooh,
played. Yes.
ooh. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Did you play Dragon
I
Strike?
didn't play it, but I had friends who would talk about it.
Yeah.
So I just never got to experience it, but I heard about it.
Do you want the full behind the scenes story on
Yeah,
like what
yeah,
happened there? Oh man,
yeah.
this is so obviously like I was growing up at a very interesting time in that we had the satanic panic happening when I
Mm-hmm.
was a kid, and you too, right?
Yeah.
And I 100% my parents were briefly on the train of Dungeons and Dragons is an evil game. And like they had at my mom's school an in service about how evil Dungeons and Dragons was as a game and how insidious it was and how it
Oh
shouldn't
wow.
be at schools, which I thought was, you think back to that, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, they ran an in service for that at a public school just to say that this game is dangerous. And then we find out, no, it's not. In fact, it's a great storytelling tool and it teaches kids math. Um, big surprise, but
Mm-hmm.
they did not want me to play it at all. So all those books were banned from me.
Oh
I couldn't
no.
even look at them. Like when I went to that section of the bookstore and I'm like, these are games and these are storytelling games. As a kid, my parents were just like, nope, nope, spellcraft, wizardry, that's bad. And I
That
didn't know any better. So
that was with my folks, but then my mom
yeah.
also got on the kick in the mid to late '90s about anime having subliminal messages into it, and I was asking for
Oh,
the Dragon Ball Z VHS set back then, and she
yeah.
was like, "No, no, it's full of subliminal messages," and I'm like, "No, it's not."
It's a cartoon. It's anime.
Yeah.
It's just a story. Yeah, I got hit by that. So then my grandmother bought this box for Christmas, and it was this completely unassuming coffin box that I opened up into a game that was called Dragon Strike that had absolutely nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons,
Mm-hmm.
despite being printed by TSR Inc. Absolutely the company that made Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was like baby's first Dungeons and Dragons, basically.
Oh.
There was a tape that you got to watch.
Oh yeah, I remember those games. They would interact with the VHS.
Oh no, this you didn't even
No.
get to interact with this VHS. This wasn't that advanced. Like this
Okay.
wasn't that fancy. No, you just got to watch the VHS and go, you too could have an adventure just like that if you only set up all these pieces over here.
Oh my gosh.
And have five of your friends play characters just like these people. And the dungeon master, by the way, they had him wearing a black turtleneck on a black background.
Oh
So
my
he was a
gosh.
floating head. It like the video started like you walk into the dungeon of despair.
Oh man.
It's like whoa. Yeah. So
So
that's how I got my gaming start.
that's awesome. What
Yeah.
was your first ever actual tabletop campaign?
Dragon Strike.
Dragon Strike? Yeah.
Yeah, it was Dragon Strike. It was running through the initial mods that they had there because
Mm-hmm.
they gave you two resources back then. They gave you the actual book telling you how to run the adventure, and then there was a separate book that was the secret maps that showed you how to put all the monsters on the board or when to launch the monsters because people were really bad at it at that point, right? Like no one knew when to put down monsters, how to use them or anything like that. So they were all preset and
Yeah.
just these preset scenarios. Then after that, like all my friends and I, we liked it so much as young 10-year-olds that we were like, let's do another one. Like this is great. Like we're having a lot of fun telling these stories as kids. So Like, what else is there? And then we ended up playing Planescape. That was a jump to go from standard fantasy to Planescape.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
Yeah, especially with like the concepts in it that were just much more brutal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What was the first GM experience you had?
A first GM experience. Like how so?
Like running a campaign
Ooh.
from start to finish, you know, not so much a homebrew, but just your
Yeah.
first time running a end-to-end experience.
Yeah. Like the for the very first time I got to sit behind like the DM screen and run
Mm-hmm.
like that full, we're gonna get everyone together. It was a train wreck. It was awful. I think it was by then I had been running campaigns or pseudo campaigns at that point as a kid for at least 6 years, 7 years at that point. And I was like, I'm good at this. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, and then of course I kept growing up and kept being like, wow, I'm not good at this. And I keep learning that there's new ways to improve.
Yeah.
But it was definitely frightening for me as a GM behind the table for the first time, because there was a lot of pressure from my friends. Like there was a lot of pressure I felt as a game master to provide a good time for my friends, because up to that point, like we had always done these ad hoc adventures, and then one person decided to run a campaign, and it was great. Like we were having a wonderful time. And then I wanted to open a campaign with a different story, and people weren't really that into it.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And competing,
hold on. You
competing
froze
campaigns.
for a second. I don't know if that's. There we go. Now I think we're okay now. That was
We're
weird.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
we're
weird.
okay.
Oh, now it's telling me my internet connection is unstable. It has now let me know that. But yeah, so we had the back and forth for a little bit. But my end just, I didn't have the vision and I didn't have like the audience yet.
Yeah.
And so like we started playing my campaign and it wasn't as fun. And we ended up going back to my friend's campaign just overall.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was a really different experience.
I bet so.
Yeah.
What was the first campaign or game you got involved with that really caused your imagination just to run and just you could see the world without any representation? You could just see it all.
The first game that really got my mind jogging,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a tabletop game actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna like throw you a curveball here. It wasn't. It was there were many games that always get my mind jogging, but like the one that really sung to me and really captured me as a design and as a storyline was a game that you can't play anymore. And it's called I Love Bees.
Oh.
I Love Bees was a campaign. It was a promotion for Halo 2.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was an alternate reality game. It was one of the earliest alternate reality games. There were others like it, but it's played in real life. And
Mm-hmm.
the objective was you had this website that we found, and it was just called ilovebees.com. And it was run by this old sweet lady, like a beekeeper. And the website's just trashed, like hacked, ripped apart,
Oh,
looks
wow.
weird. Right. And then when you start investigating more and more, you find out that there's other code running underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you dive too deep, you realize that that code is an artificial intelligence that should be running a USNC Halo ship. So like that was
That's cool.
something. That was
That's cool.
cool, right? Like
Yeah.
to have that breach when we finally realized, because we were playing for a while. I was playing for a while and I didn't know it was Halo. I had no clue. And I'm a big Halo fan, like in and out. And finally we got this question, and the question on the phone line, oh, so I should say with the website had GPS coordinates.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to go to where these coordinates pointed at specific times. And we went
Interesting.
there, right? And when we
Mm-hmm.
stood there, all of a sudden in the background, you would hear a ringing phone.
Huh.
And that's because every GPS coordinate targeted a payphone. And when you picked it up, the AI was on the other end,
Oh my
ready for
gosh.
you. Yes.
That is impressive.
Yeah. And it was voice activated. So she would give questions. A princess would give questions. And the one question when we finally got it was, who was the enemy? And someone just for fun said the Covenant, just to be an idiot. And she went, that is the correct answer. And everybody went, oh no, we know what universe this is now.
Mm-hmm.
That means there's military. That means there's guns. That means there's a whole variety of problems that we don't know about, including the
Yeah.
Covenant and aliens themselves. And it ended up being this wild radio play that we unlocked by accessing payphones. And eventually, Operator became a live character. We had to role play with her in real time.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, you would pick up the phone and expecting the recording, and all of a sudden you would get on the other end, like, I picked up the phone one night and I was like, yeah, I'll give the answer. And she immediately went, that is the correct answer. Immediately identify yourselves, agent. And I was like,
Oh,
wasn't that good at improv? And
that is
that
great.
was one of the first times I really got put on the spot for improv, role play improv. And I was just like, I'm the head navigator, lead navigator of the ship that we have that we don't know the name of. Like, and she ratted me out. She was like, I don't trust you. And I was like, but ma'am, I'm trying to save you. I know about all this, this, and this. And then she was like, I trust you enough. You basically, like dug your way out of the hole.
Yeah.
I saved myself in that encounter. And then she delivered coordinates to my email, which then we had to then ferry to other players for reasons. But it unlocked a puzzle in that moment. Like it was an instant puzzle that I was not expecting and had to answer on the fly.
Way to go, Bungie. I mean, that's
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was big. I mean, that was huge for back then to be doing something like that. I mean, now you see ARGs more often.
Yes. No, these days. Yeah. And that's what inspired me to make my own alternate reality games back in 2005 and actually run next to that and begin doing development on my own, saying like, awesome. I never thought you could make games like this. And I love role playing. Like I was like, how could you always bring role playing to the masses? Like, how can you have large scale groups of people role playing? And it was like one of the first times it was able to be pulled off with safety as well, I should say.
That's really cool.
Because all the places were public. Like they thought about that because they wanted players to talk to each other. So they wanted players to meet each other in real life. And people made friendships through it. Like people made guilds. Like it was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, I ended up playing enough where I ended up getting invited to New York for one final, as Operator put it when she called, a live test fire exercise. And all of us laughed and we're like, oh, what are they setting up? Because the game is over at this point, and there was this final like curtain call, and I wasn't expecting the invite from Operator, but she invited us, and we took her up on the offer and said, yeah, we'll try and make it. And then we got sent these 2 mysterious tickets, me and my friends, and we took the train up to New York and landed and got to the place, and it was an AMC movie theater, and we were like, what the hell do we do? And we walked inside, we're asking around the staff, and they have no clue what we're talking about. Like this guy, like we found the manager, and we're like, hey, like, is there a Halo promotion here from Microsoft? And I was like, what's Halo? And we were like, oh God, great, we're in the wrong place. And so we went outside, we were discussing what to do, and then all of a sudden the same manager came out, and he put on a beret, and then locked up with a, like, he put on a pin that was the Apocalypso pin. And then went, soldiers of the force, rank and file, call your names. And he had the list.
That's
awesome.
And
we got to say our call signs. And then we each got like little goodie bags and like our own badges, like for basically being a soldier who survived through the fight of the USNC Apocalypso. And the Apocalypso is now in the lore. You can go find that ship. That ship has a time accident in Halo's lore. But yeah, I'm technically one of the crew members of that ship.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. I've never heard a story like that before.
I know, it's crazy. It's such a crazy idea, right?
It is. Wow, that's hard to follow up on.
Yeah. That's how I got a really good introduction to like live action role playing or role playing with people you never meet. Because like, how do you start that encounter? When a person doesn't know role play and you have to role play with them. That could go in 20 million different directions. Yeah.
Yeah, it could. Have you ever had a session where you were leading a game and it ended up being an intervention for one of your players?
Oh, yes.
If you can speak about it.
Well, it's sort of intervention because many times, unfortunately, yes, I could say that's a common, not a common, but a relatively regular thing that happens at the table. Like people bring parts of themselves that they may not realize that they're bringing, and then they realize only in play that they're touching on something that's deep and meaningful to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but like what do you mean like that by like
Things
an
like that,
intervention?
emotional things coming to light, or just that having that aha, that they have that aha moment, or a life changing aha moment that
Yeah.
helps them become a better person.
It's interesting because in some ways, yes, I have
Mm-hmm.
seen many people work through some of their fears, some of their own anxieties, um, some of their own concerns from real life, like that people perceive them to be like X, and so
Mm-hmm.
for they act like it just to see like what is that like. Or sometimes I've had people be like, people have described me this way, and I didn't know what that meant until someone else role played a character who was also being described that way, and I got to see it right in
Gotcha.
front of me. And because of that, like, I thought about my own behavior and then said there are things about myself I would love to change, and maybe I should get on that. There definitely have talked through a couple people through that, but the big one that I always seem to see comes from Larp. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't come from tabletop. It actually always comes from Larp, because Larp is in the moment. Larp is the full experience package. You are wearing the costume. Everyone else is wearing the costume. You're in the middle of the woods at night. Trust me, when it's cold and you're tired, you
Yep.
do feel like you're in a battle, right? Like you
Yeah.
feel like you're there because you are in many ways. You are there. Not fully, of course, because we could always go back to civilization and eat a pizza, but
True.
um, but in those moments, I have seen people quite literally experience things that cause them to have a full breakdown, like just unleash pent up stress or aggression or thoughts. Like this thing at work was just aggravating me, and now like I'm gonna have this scene where I'm screaming as an orc with my
Mm-hmm.
friend who has expected it, and we talked about it before, and he's not adverse to me screaming at him, but now I have like this outlet, like, and that it tells me something about myself, which I thought was always really powerful about Larp. I didn't really realize how deep it could get until I was there in it.
Right. Now, outside of the Halo event,
Yeah.
what was one of your favorite LARP experiences or LARP campaigns?
Oh, well, that's easy. There is like, I mean, I've been to a number of LARPs at this point, both big and small. I've run a couple of small ones on my own that were mostly just like one shots that you had in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But my favorite of all time is still Magical 2 and Magical 3. They are one united campaign. It's Magical 3 at this point, and that's up in Massachusetts.
That's awesome.
Simply because that world is so well built by our game master Rob, um, and the lore of it is so deep and wonderful, and he really makes room for other people at the game. And that is the thing I respect the most about that game, because I am one of the leaders. I mean, I've got to toot my own
Mm-hmm.
horn, but I play like a leadership character or a style character because I have a lot of those abilities. And so I fall into that role a lot. And sometimes I don't always want to, but he does a lot to make sure every player feels like they're heroic, like they have a moment when they can shine, when it's not me or someone else or the standard leader characters you would
Yeah.
expect on the front lines. It mixes up. And that's important to me, because like I want to see my friends on the front line. I want to see them having their moment of glory, because that's in fact more meaningful to me than me having a moment of glory, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, that's
uh,
the pride of leadership, is to see your
I guess, yeah.
subordinates succeed and excel.
Right, but they're not my subordinates. There's friends,
Yeah, you know what I
like,
mean.
yeah,
Within the
yeah.
context of the role play, also
Of the
is
role
that,
play, yeah.
yeah, that it can feel that way, and in that pride can easily transition over into that real life of
Bond, yeah.
seeing them enjoy the glory.
Yeah. And I mean, it's more than that. Like, we all put in a lot of work to
Mm-hmm.
make that game great. There is not a single player on that field who does not work to have a fun time. And I think that's what I respect the most about that game, is that we are lucky enough to have a population of players who understand that playing is fun,
Mhm.
and that the staff will deliver you fun, and like you will have a good time, but you can't have a good time if you don't let yourself have fun, or if you don't open yourself up to those opportunities. You have to be silly to
Yeah.
get silly, right? Like, and you have to stand out. You have to like do something that lets you stand out to really like make impacts upon others on the field. That's how we tell stories. Like that's how that everyone's acting
Yeah.
100% of the time, right? And you could walk down like a road or a creek, and you could see someone off in the distance just whistling like a folklore song, right? And that keeps you in the moment. That keeps the scene going in your head, that fantasy. And that's so
Mhm.
important. And a lot of people don't know, like, don't even think about that to do that. But you could just be sitting there whistling by yourself thinking that you're all alone, but really you've just made someone else's day because they saw you from a distance. Like that's powerful.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I actually I don't have a lot of experience with LARP. I
Yeah.
only went to one or two gatherings, and they were for Vampire, for Masquerade, and it was very different than what I was expecting. What you're describing is more like what I was expecting,
Yeah.
of that. And now, what do you think about how LARP is represented in pop culture?
Oh, oh, that's a good question.
I bring that up because the most recent one that I saw was Hawkeye
Yeah, I haven't seen Hawkeye
representation,
yet.
which
Yeah.
it was more of an SCA style representation,
Yeah.
but with the foam weaponry instead of actual, rattan weapons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because if SEA, it was more of the SAA style,
Yeah.
it would just be metal and they'd just be hitting each other.
Yeah. No,
Because,
this
like,
was foam. It was
yeah,
armor, but foam weapons.
right.
So
Right. Yeah. Because the SEA, like, their
yeah,
style of combat is
full metal
they wear
plates.
everything real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real.
A
Like, that's
good
that's a real sword you're getting hit with there, buddy.
a good buddy of mine was SCA, and he was a shield and mace, and I used to help him practice because I went dual blade,
Yeah.
and he was trying to teach me to use shield, and he knocked me down most of the time because he was a much bigger guy than me. I was
Yeah.
more built for that quick in and out and get under the shield and come up.
Oh yeah, get that cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And dual blade is like, you chose like one of the hardest combat styles
Hmm.
slash most unrealistic combat style.
Yeah.
Did you know? Yeah.
I did. I modeled it. Actually, I
Yeah.
modeled it a lot after Ezio
Oh
for
yeah, yeah,
Assassin's Creed,
yeah.
because that's what they were missing, was someone that would operate off the field too for some of
Oh,
the covert
interesting.
storylines.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
Oh, that
more what I
sounds
wanted to
cool.
go for.
Yeah.
Stick a sticker on the bottom of a mug to indicate poison and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the subtlety plays. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Those things are really cool. And yeah, I was gonna say, like, with the dual sword and like the skullduggery stuff, we actually found it plays better in LARP,
Hmm.
like with Boffer, than it does with actual metal swords. Because if you do two swords like in real life, it's just too heavy. Like you just don't get the right balance, and like you're always flanging around. But if you do it with the Boffers, you fine, and you could block
Yeah.
hits like a ridiculous like you're unhittable basically.
Buffers are fun. I
Yeah.
That was my first Renaissance Fair experience. Was I was with a group of privateers.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I went with them and stayed with them for the weekend. So that was our job, was to just cause skullduggery and mayhem.
That sounds like a good time. Did you steal anything? Did you steal stuff?
Uh, I poisoned the captain of the guard.
Did he was it successful?
Yes.
Very nice. Got in there, got out. Well,
Yep.
well played. But yeah, like it's very different, I'd say, than what you might have experienced, because Vampire as a LARP series is much more in the Nordic parlor style of LARP. It
Hmm.
is hand symbols, right, and gestures
Yeah.
to show plays and magic. It's not as realistic because everyone's in house, so there's no running. We don't want to be running around the house in
No.
a crazy way, or chasing people, but we don't mind doing that in the forest. So, the American style or the German style of LARP actually is more of the field battle and actual reenactment style. that you would think more like a Gettysburg or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's something I would have to look into getting into because it sounds really interesting.
It's a lot of fun and it's great exercise.
I bet so.
Say that.
I could use some of that.
Yeah. I feel weird, by the way, because like I'm wearing the mask and like normally I'm all dolled up for this, as I said, coming in, and now I'm like, I'm not in character for this. Like this is a normal, like,
you're fine.
Just talk with
this is
Mistress Astra. It's not like me doing like the big magic thing or anything.
This is us just chilling and chatting, which is fine. That's what I want with this series.
Right.
And was there ever a time, because we've all heard the stories of this, where as a GM, you just had that one player that you didn't want them to do this. And so you turned it into either a really funny scene or like, all right, here you go.
The number of times I've done the all right, here you go. Like, you want it. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, like I very rarely discourage players as a GM from not taking an opportunity. The only way I would discourage them is if it would lead to circumstances where I know that they would be uncomfortable. Actually, that's when I usually kick in and I'm like, hey, maybe you should reconsider everything you just did, and we should retcon this, and we should, walk it back for a minute. Because as a GM, you can always do that. Like, you can always just say, stop, pause, no.
Yep. I mean, that's the reason why we have the X card system with Geek Therapeutics, is to avoid those situations. Yeah. And that's been hard on me as the producer coming in, because these guys have had, 2 weeks together already. And, I like doing a little bit of color commentary and some jokes, and I'll say something and I inadvertently step onto a subject without meaning to.
Right.
But I'm learning from it.
Right.
And thanks to yourself and a couple others, I've gotten to jump in and play a voice or something with the night, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I want to have you back for another night. We're gonna have to arrange for the voice of Fritz to come in on another night and scare the poop out of people. Maybe for my upcoming game.
That'd be awesome. I actually played a what was it? A Yeti for this Elves on Strike game that Renee played.
Oh, Renee made you do Elves on Strike?
Yeah, right around Christmas. Right around Christmas. And he was Bobo the Yeti.
Oh my god.
And they joined the strike because they wanted functional restrooms because they had to use the forest and TP instead of pine cones.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. It was one of the funniest campaigns we ever had, and they just were laughing so hard. I love kind of doing that, trying to do the whole Monty Python thing for the Roman Emperor type scene. Where I'll purposely try and break people.
I've done that in missions where, I'll lead them up to the mission and I'll be like, this is a very serious encounter you're about to go into. Like, there will be consequences after we're done this battle. But one of your NPCs walks up to you and says, sir, I represent the Grand Church of Shaylin, and we have come forward with our most holy and blessed of artifacts, the Holy Hand Grenade. And I've done that, and everyone just goes, oh no. And then the mechanic was they did have to count to 3. They could not go beyond 3. There was all these number mechanics where if it went over 3, it blew up too early. So
oh no.
With the mod and the mission. Yeah, it was chaos.
I bet.
Oh no, I somehow lost your sound.
What? You lost my sound?
Oh, maybe because my headset. I was so rowdy. My headset has popped out. I am just that excitable. Oh, goodness. There we go.
Welcome back.
I can hear you again suddenly.
This is why I love doing these kind of shows, is because we get these these little experiences, and we get we get these great stories that are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's always
normally, like I said, it's me being like the scary, like, I am going to be your DM for the evening. And now I'm
mm-hmm.
just like, I'm a fumbling dum dum.
uh I have to say, Made was a fantastic experience. I had never
Thank you.
seen the game played, and it was
Yeah.
so much fun to get to see that done.
Drop a pin. Yeah, Made is one of the more random ones, and I
Hmm.
was nervous about pulling it in as my first one here, um, because that one has the potential to always go off the rails, and
Hmm.
that's why I chose it actually because it does, and I wanted to be able to have a game where GMs could say, "You need to set boundaries, and if you
Hmm.
don't, like, you can get content that you really will not like very quickly
Yep.
by accident." Right?
And you had such a good cast of characters with
Yeah.
that cohort. They were really good at creating and embodying that character.
Yeah. Yeah, they were really good at knowing where the line was. I
Yep.
really respected that about that group because they came close. And I was nervous as the new GM to Geek Therapeutics and meeting all these people for the first time. Like, I was like, I don't know if I'm getting to a point where I should really step in and shut this down. And they never hit that point. Like, they
No,
always
they didn't.
grazed it and then came back immediately
Yeah.
to be like, and this is why we don't do it. And I was like, that's exactly what Made exists for, actually. It's to create those situations where it looks like it could lead into that etchy moment, and
Hmm.
then it diverts away from it for the comedy. And it
Yep.
even emphasizes that in the book. And those players never learned those rules. Like, think about that.
No, they didn't.
In that book is 300 pages. There's a whole section devoted to how to create comedy in these situations. They did most of it, and I never taught them any of it.
Ad hoc. They just did it naturally.
Yeah, they did naturally because they know, at least three of them had mentioned before we had started, they knew the common jokes in these types of harem animes.
Hmm.
And so because of that, there was shared knowledge around how the jokes are structured.
Which is great, and
Yeah,
that makes the campaign almost write itself in a lot of ways.
it does. It really does. I think that's what makes Made such a great system for newbies too. It's not something like, as people were like, but can this be used for therapeutic reasons? And I was like, yes and no, because, like, should you use this specific content for therapy? No, no,
Mm-mm.
ever, no. But the mechanics behind it, especially Made's ability to have tables, roll a die, and you get a plot effect
Yeah.
off the bat, and it is, and it will always make something interesting. That's something you can always take forward with you in therapy and work and many other places, because it's an idea generation machine. That's all. It just gives you a beat to work with, and nothing more. And when people have that beat and they can align that vision, that's when you get those great scenes and that great role play.
That's awesome. What is your favorite tabletop system or tabletop series to work within?
Oh, it changes. I've worked in a number of series at this point. Like, I've run a number of campaigns in all sorts of games, from Nobilis to Awaken to Big Eyes Small Mouth,
Hmm.
Spycraft. I could go down the list of, like, the various books that are on my bookshelf made, you know. Um, and I'd say my favorite, the one that I come back to time and time again, is a esoteric French RPG, and it's called Gone.
Hmm.
And it's never a game I would ever bring here to, like, Geek Therapeutics, and it's not a game I would bring to a lot of places because it's older, it's
Hmm.
complicated, it uses a weird D10 system, and to boot, it's French. So when they translated it, they didn't translate it very well, and
Gotcha.
there are many places in the book where it actually, like, loops itself, or, like, there's errors or things like that. So they only got 3 books in here in America, but in France they got 25
Oh,
because it was a
geez.
big hit, because it was based off of a very famous French fantasy novel called The Gaunt.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, everyone over there, like, played this role-playing game in France at that period of time. But here for us, no one's ever heard of it. But it's a beautiful game. It focuses on how do multiple races and creeds exist within a continent, which I thought was fascinating because it really focused on the people of the continent and
Yeah.
their interactions, rather than there's some big bad coming in. Although they do have that. There is the big bad in the game. His name is the Mask, and he is basically like the Mask of Red Death.
Okay.
He is an embodiment of play structure, and he believes that the whole world should be a play under his control. So his powers all center around infecting people and twisting them into like corrupted puppets that become actors that he calls. And the
Hmm.
actors are, you can't recognize them if you're a dullard or you're a standard person. You don't have enough magic to basically perceive that these other people aren't human. And then if you are awakened, or if you have the flame in Agon, because the flame of the soul and the flame of creativity is where all of your power comes from, then you are empowered to be able to see these things in the world. But they have a very bad effect on you in that there's a sanity system in the game, basically. They even called it out. They said that they were 100% inspired by the Call of Cthulhu when they built that system, because it can be
It's a
used as insanity
yeah,
effects.
and it
Yeah.
is a good system on how these things you're seeing or experiencing could affect the mind,
Yeah.
and it
And
can cause people who don't have known or it have ever experienced these mental health issues get a small glimpse
yeah,
into these aspects.
it also did a lot in that game that I love around setting up different types of players who have different types of, I'm going to say flaws is
Hmm.
the game way, or disabilities is
Yeah.
the real life way, right? Like you could take flaws in Agon that could make you one-armed or one-legged, and it
Yep.
gave you a lot of points back to put into other things and become a better character, actually. But you did have a massive penalty on you. And I always incentivize that across players. Some players were like, I don't want any flaws. And I'm like, then you're going to have the most boring character in this game. Like,
Hmm.
you want one flaw at least, because it's just going to flavor things up and make it way more interesting for you. And it does every single time. Like, there's even one called, it's a flaw called Haunted by a Ghost. And
Mm.
basically, the GM can every once in a while during stressful situations just say, like, and you turn and you see the ghost of your lover in the corner. And that makes you
Oh
feel
wow.
things, So all of a sudden it adds in this extra weight to this already diplomatic situation. Yeah.
That makes me think of, because I'm a film nut, Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
Him seeing his friend.
Yeah.
That could be really interesting to throw stuff like that, especially into a werewolf campaign. If someone gets turned,
Uh,
have them see their first victim.
right. Yes.
So stuff
That's
like that.
hard to do.
Yeah.
We're doing a campaign right now where one of our friends just became a lycanthrope, and he
Oh
just
wow.
mastered the change for the first time. So that was a big character building moment for him, because he was before that, willy-nilly going into rages and causing
Hmm.
problems for the party. And now he's finally reached that point where he's successfully controlled it. And everybody was like, holy crap, we have a functional werewolf in the
That's
party.
awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah, so that's only going to get better, right? But for a while, it was a real downer because he was basically bringing down every mission by himself by accident.
Hmm.
So,
It was
um,
almost like having a berserker that
yes,
that can't control their moments of berserk.
it was 100% like that. And
Yeah.
Agon is filled with things like that for the
Cool.
GM to use and for the player to use. Or even one like you're disowned from your family was one
Hmm.
of them. You have a secret base that only you know about, and it's like a spycraft network where you
Oh
have your own
wow.
spies and you can make separate checks to get extra information on diplomacy from someone else. As you can see, Agon is a very diplomatic political game, and that's
Yeah.
because all characters start at 40, age 40.
Oh wow.
You do not start at 18 or whatever,
So
young newbie adventurer. You've been around.
socialite age, having to worry about where you stand within social parties and everything. That's
Oh,
really
even
cool.
worse. Every party member has to have an office, and the offices are all connected to a major town. You
Oh.
have a holding, and you can be the king and queen, and people choose it when they run with me. And I've had them run very hard plots where, yeah, you went off to adventure, didn't you? You came back and you found your cities in a little bit of a disarray because
Yep.
you're the leader, and you just went on a holiday for a month. Yeah, and now that
Oof.
affects, even the city gets stats in Agon, and the stats are very similar
that's
to a character, and you're
that's
told to
very cool.
adjust them up and down as, and they're very like, you can make rolls on them, but it's mostly there for the players to understand what is the effect that they're having on their city. Is it
Hmm.
good or bad? And it can go up both ways. There is soul, like there's like the light version of a stat and the dark
Hmm.
version. And if the dark
Gotcha.
version's rising, that's like rebellion, that's dissent, things like
Hmm.
that.
Descent, crime.
Crime.
Yeah.
Like for
That's
one of my leaders, her major problem was they had a pearl trade in the city, and that sustained most of the jobs. But the plot line they were currently under was the pearl trade is threatened. So if
oh
they didn't get
no.
it done, then it would have hit against the finances and it would have dinged the finance stat into a black mark. And then if that would have happened, they all knew that that would have upset enough of the people that the tradesmen would quit working, and therefore no weaponry,
Yep.
no armor until they got paid.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That that's like taking a role-playing game and putting Age of Empires on top of it.
Yeah, it really is at times, because you're sending missives mid-mission to other cities sometimes to be like, can
Mhm.
you send some aid to my city because I'm not there? And they'll say yes or no. I'll look up the nobles because they're all listed in the book and their personalities and be like, you might have just petitioned the wrong group. And now they have opinions on you.
That's awesome.
Like they had to get into the Widowlands which is the Medusa area. I love it. It's based off of like Italy, and they all wear masks, like very
Nice.
Venetian mask style. And it's also a matriarchal society. And one of the members was an ex-Medusa who fled, and she
Oh,
could not be spotted. And they did
oh
not know they
no.
were going to the Widowlands until Act 3 of that mission. They were like,
Oh
Act 1
no.
over here, Act 2 still in the same city, Act 3, hey, your target's in the Widowlands. And then the Medusa went,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a problem. I'm banned. And so they had to like cross the border and everything. It was a big deal. Like I didn't think about that going in, but it made a brand new mod just for trafficking them across the
Yeah.
border.
Quick comment from
Yeah.
Joel from my channel, Joel Mochi.
Yeah.
Uh, Worked up the confidence to say that they think your mask is really, really cool.
Oh, thank you.
Joel is one of my, I believe, one of my youngest viewers. So,
Oh, thank you, Joel. I appreciate that. Yeah,
um,
I love kitsunes. I love
mhm.
foxes and the fox mythos of the kitsune. So I wear the mask.
That's awesome. Well, let's get into that a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What about the mythos caught your attention and led to the development of adopting the kitsune as part of your persona?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. That was a lot of soul searching, actually. I've had a variety of characters that are always like representative of my persona, and I've
Mm-hmm.
had them change throughout the years as I've changed. For a while it was an angel, for a while it was a just a adventurer, a paladin. Then it was a vampire for a while, and now it's a kitsune. And I ended up coming to the kitsune because I'm doing a lot more work in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a lot more talking. And in the past, being a community manager means that I get to read a lot of opinions on people's
Oh yeah.
opinions of me.
Yep.
And one of the things that they've always called me, and I always really didn't like because it's not my style, is the great liar. I remember they used to always lay on me. It would be like, well, you're here because you're supposed to come out and lie to us about how good this game release is, even though we know it's not. And it's like, no, we're all back here. We're gamers. Like, we care about games. We like games. We
Yeah.
want to make you fun games. Like, we're not here to be cruel to you. And that cut. And then, and it was mostly about being trans, because they felt like they couldn't trust me because I was a transgender individual. And that was new, right?
Yeah.
That was unheard of. Especially for me, I was like the third transgender community manager in gaming, period. And the first two have passed, unfortunately.
Oh,
And one of them was my friend. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear
Um,
that.
yeah. So like there's a lot of weight that's placed on
Mm-hmm.
us as community managers and as leaders. So when they called me a liar, like I took it to heart, because that's not me. And the kitsune is also a beast. It's not also commonly known as a liar, a trickster, a thief, and in its mythos, if you don't dig into it, then all you hear are the stories of kitsune leading men to their deaths.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do look into it and you do the history as I have done, and like really get into the mythos, you also find that kitsune are protectors. Like they
Yes.
are very knowledgeable, very
There's a reason why they
wise.
protect most of the shrines.
Yeah, they protect shrines.
Mm-hmm.
And the white kitsu is always, as seen as a very celestial being.
Mm-hmm.
So to represent myself as a nine-tailed white fox is very meaningful because it's a protector spirit. It's a
Yep.
defense spirit. So even though you could look at it and be like, it's a beguiling trickster spirit, not the point.
No,
The point
that's just
is
one
help
aspect of
you.
it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, especially with the celestial ones, it was always more that they were tricksters to people that they actually cared about and were close to. It was their
Yes.
way of showing their
Their love.
affection for someone.
Yeah. Kitsune are very romantic beasts, and I am
Mm-hmm.
too. Like as a mistress, I have done sex work in the past. I am a professional dom,
Mm-hmm.
outside of here. But I also have a background in psychology. I'm also a game designer. I'm a great many things beyond just
Yes.
being, a kitsune, just this one thing that you might have seen one time, you know. That's why I think the trickster spirit and the shapeshifter made perfect sense. I am a shapeshifter. Like,
Yep.
I change characters, I change voice styles, I change, all sorts of things. So it fit.
It does fit. And it really can uh, embody all those things.
Yeah.
And that's what's amazing about it. And that's also what I love about Geek Therapeutics is we reach out and support the LGBTQ plus
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
We support the Kinkster community,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of resources for those. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not afraid to admit I'm a switch, so
Yeah.
I get it. And
Yeah.
I was trained by a professional dame who is still part of my chosen family and
Right.
is
Yeah.
awesome. Actually, she
Yeah.
was in here a little bit earlier.
Oh,
Cyber,
okay.
and she identifies as a fox too. So,
Wow. Yeah. One of my friends actually always told me she also identifies as a fox, and she was like, "You're a fox. You just don't know it yet." And she
hmm
told me that like 20 years ago, and I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm a human. Damn it!" And now
and
we get
both
here.
uh, Joel and Kara Thrace are saying trans people are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's really nice to like feel that trust these days.
hmm
That didn't exist for a long time.
It
And it's
didn't.
still a fight to get that trust, that we are just people.
Yep,
That's it. No more than no less. Um, and all we want to be is treated like equals. That's it.
that's exactly
So,
it.
yeah.
Yep, Kara is trans as well, and
Okay.
one of Joel's best friends is trans. So
Oh, so nice.
it's awesome, and
It's a lot.
that's why have always tried to
Yeah.
build as my community is welcome everybody.
Yes. Same.
Leave your
Yeah.
beliefs and political stuff at the door.
Yeah.
Come chill on the couch. Let's play.
Yeah. Listen, let's play. Yes, let's
Yeah.
play. That's why I make it my motto. My motto is always, as the mistress, let's play. And it's that because I want people to play. You
Yeah.
should. You deserve to have fun. You deserve to feel good about yourself. You
Exactly.
deserve to relax. Life's hard enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously. But I also welcome people to, if they need to say something while
Yeah.
we're live and they want a community to talk to about it, please bring it up. Long as we all stay respectful and calm about it, we will
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah. One of my roommates is conservative.
hmm
And people are always like, like, oh, you can't live. My roommate is a conservative, like, and I live with him just fine. He's a
hmm
wonderful man. He's one of my best friends. Like, he's a brother to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I am going to take a moment now that we have
Yeah.
about
Because
5 minutes left in
I was
our
about to
time.
say, we're about there.
Let's open it up to our audience. If you guys have any questions for Mistress Astra,
Yeah.
please
I'd
go ahead
love
and
to
put
hear
them into
them.
chat, and I will answer. I will relay them over to Mistress Astra, and then
Thank
she
you.
can answer.
Yeah. So you said you were playing stuff after this. I heard you're
Yeah,
playing Horizon Zero Dawn.
that is the plan tonight. Yep. I
Ooh,
have played for a
taking
little bit
Alloy
last
out.
night. I almost got to Meridian, and then the game crashed, and
Yeah.
I hadn't stopped at a campfire since I left
Oh,
to start the path. So I just was like, I'm done. I'm done for the night. I'm going to bed.
yep. Yep. That feeling that I have lost too much progress.
Yeah.
Bedtime.
Yes. So you are a game designer, correct?
Yes.
Joel is
Yes.
asking.
I've been a game designer. I'm currently a producer. And so I do some game design, but I work next to game designers mostly. Yes.
Gotcha. Joel says that's one of their dreams is to become a
Oh,
game designer.
Well, then I can tell you a lot if you want to know how to meet those dreams, Joel. Like there's a lot of things, especially if you're younger and you're still in school,
Hmm.
um, what I tell all systems designers or young game designers is you gotta love math. You're
Yep.
gonna love some math. Like if math doesn't jive with you now, you might want to look into it a bit more and see what about math does jive with you. Because for me, I always didn't like math actually,
Hmm.
but I ended up loving probability of all things. Like,
Interesting.
yeah, I thought algebra wasn't that great. And then I got to probability and was like, this is much more interesting. And then I got to higher levels of how you apply the math. And then I was
Yeah.
like, well, this is now fascinating. Now I'm interested. Like now, like I see the use of this. But probability is a big thing for game designers to know, to understand how things can be controlled or dropped or experienced, because just because you say 10% doesn't mean it actually drops 10% of the time. Like, for example, you have to check that against the system and randomization.
Yep.
Another thing, is keep playing games, play a bunch of games and think about them critically. I always say to folks, literature courses are
Hmm.
actually really, really good at breaking down stories, narrative, plots, and very importantly, the reasoning why.
Hmm.
The what did this story mean and why is the writer writing it like this? Because a game designer does the same thing.
Yep.
They do it on a 4D level, right? A writer's doing it almost on the 2D level where it's just words, description, scene, and trying to set the scene in your mind. A painter is trying to do it on a canvas. A game designer is trying to do it in a 3D space and then somehow tell you what to do without actually telling you anything.
Hmm.
You have to figure it out, but we have to put enough hints in there for you to know. And that's one of the best things you could learn as a young game designer, like growing up. And then of course modding, like just
Yep.
programming. You need to know how to program. Like
I would also suggest a little bit of cinematography so you can get
cinematography.
lighting,
Yeah.
camera angles,
Yeah.
because you got to have that film eye a little bit on
Yes. A
how
little
you're
bit of
trying to
the film.
present the story. Now this is my own question to come forward with
Yeah.
it. Would you recommend someone to start doing some basic learning in something like Unity or Unreal?
Yeah.
Which
That's
of
a
the free engines would you recommend for someone to kind of start
there
dabbling in?
there are a lot of engines on the market. And the best engine to dabble with is, in my opinion, the engine you are most interested in. And that may not be a dominant engine.
Hmm.
Um, and that is just because if you're coming into coding, are you coming into coding for the first time? Or is this like you've done it before? Like, what is your knowledge of like building something like this or something programmatically?
For me, I've fiddled a little bit with Unreal 4. So I was looking at Unreal 5 and
Okay.
start
Yeah.
really trying to, because that's much more user friendly from what I've been seeing.
Can be.
Yeah. World
And so
building wise, it's more user friendly.
it
Doing
is.
character interaction within it, not so friendly.
It's getting there,
Yeah.
But Unreal is built on two types of engine, like two types of thought.
Hmm.
And that's why I actually say never choose Unreal for your starting engine, because it is built on blueprinting and it is built on C++ at the same
Okay.
time. And most game companies, when they use Unreal, what they don't tell you is they have a team dedicated to tinkering with it and editing it and changing it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And those pieces are actually quite needed for really good games out of it. But
Gotcha.
Unity is really good. It can be as simple as VN Maker,
Mm.
Twine, or something like RPG Maker,
Yeah.
which I at least put down the basics of this is how you code, this is how you think, and
Hmm.
this is how you can put together small mods that you can test relatively quickly with little coding experience.
Gotcha.
Um, but the one that I would always like, or Source is another one. People love modding. If you
Hmm.
want to go mod Half-Life, you and everyone else under the sun, like you
Yep.
should go do it. You
Fallout.
should go mod Half-Life, Fallout, Elder Scrolls,
Yep.
Daisy. I can go down the list of moddable games like
Yeah.
Conan. These are also all great places to start, because then you're focused on one object. You're like, how do I make the axe work in this?
Yep.
Right. And then you can get the exposure. Like with Conan, you would have to work with Unreal.
Hmm.
Now you get the exposure to it, but in a very bite-sized chunk that's manageable.
Yeah. I'm actually in talks with the people behind the Whispering Hills mod for Fallout 4. They want me to come in
Ooh,
and do some voice acting because I've played their
nice.
mod and they heard my voice and like, do you want to play one of our characters for one of the upcoming episodes? I'm like,
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah, and those are all viable opportunities. And
mhm,
don't think that they can't go in a portfolio. They
they
can.
can.
If you're demonstrating like how you put something together and you're showing the steps, that's important. You got to show the work.
Hmm.
It can't just be the final product. You got to tell me how you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then that way we can say you do have the right knowledge and you are thinking of the right things and absolutely you are a professional at this. So those are a few quick ways to jump into the deep end if you're
Yep.
really interested in game design.
And
Second
yes,
Life,
Joel, that is
I
with
envy
Safe
you.
Room.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but no, that's great. And this has been a great talk. It
yeah.
went fast.
It went fast. I knew it would. It always does.
It does. So, Mr. Astra, I want to thank you again for being our first guest.
Yeah, of course.
And it was a blast. And hopefully
It's an
we get to
honor.
work together again very soon on another game
We
with Geek
will.
Therapeutics.
I have games coming up,
Okay.
and I guess I could just tease it.
Please.
All right. The next game that I'll be running will be two. I'll be running with for two cohorts, and it will be the same mod both times, but we'll see how
Hmm.
they approach it both times because I'm certain it will be different. And
Awesome.
it will be based in the world of the Blackout Club,
Oh,
using Tales from the Loop as its base.
very cool.
Yes.
Um, and where can we find you? Where can people go and find you outside of Geek Therapeutics? And
Yeah, I mean, the Geek Therapeutics Twitter, of course.
mhm.
You can also follow me on Twitter. I should note that I am not for underage individuals, so please do not follow me on social media if you are underage, but otherwise it's twitter.com/Astra_Ebonwing, just like my name.
Mhm.
And then, or you can search for Astra Ebonwing on Twitter. You'll find me. And the other place I'm live very frequently is twitch.tv/the unrequited library, which is the channel I help run. And my friends also joined me on. And there are a bunch of other game designers, artists, sound designers from all sorts of different places. So
That's awesome.
yeah, everyone has a big gaming background on my channel.
That's great. Well, again, thank you so much for taking part tonight.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everyone in the audience, for being here for our first episode. And tune in next week. We'll have another guest, another professional GM. And have a wonderful night. And we will see you guys on the next one. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.